Kyle Susi. I'm a UX research consultant with over 20 years of experience. I've been exploring how AI can streamline key deliverables like personas and journey maps, and I'm excited to show how these tools can support Agile discovery in this workflow today. So many Agile teams struggle with discovery because it's time consuming and under resourced. UX personas and journey maps are often skipped or created too late. Now, for those of you that might not already know, personas just capture who the user is, and a journey map will actually capture how they move through a specific journey or, I should say, an experience. So together, they ensure that the backlog reflects real user needs. This workflow uses AI to speed up synthesis, allowing teams to generate early stage insights and artifacts that can inform backlogs faster without sacrificing quality. In Agile, discovery isn't a one-time pre-planning phase. It's an ongoing process of surfacing insights and turning them into testable hypotheses. This workflow shows how AI can speed that cycle, helping teams generate personas and journey maps early so the backlog is built on evidence instead of guesswork. Success criteria and KPIs: reduce time spent manually coding data, quickly identify user needs and pain points, generate draft personas and journey maps early in the process, and support backlog creation with user-centered artifacts. So before we even touch AI, we need to first decide on persona sections. And this is really going to depend on your product and the needs of the team. We have to do this work because it's important for us to do the heavy lifting of defining the structure of the persona, not AI. And the reason why I say that is because AI doesn't understand what our team needs. We do, right? We know what we want out of the persona. We know what elements of the persona really matter and are crucial to our backlog and making sure we focus on the right things. So, for example, in this persona, we're going to pretend that we're creating a persona for the target user of a food ordering app. And these are the sections that I'll use for our demo persona, Chris, who is a busy professional who enjoys diverse cuisines. And as we look here, we're going to have a short bio, demographics, values, motivations, affinities, goals, challenges, needs, key behaviors, and preferred touch points. Now, when deciding on your persona sections, I always say that every element on a persona should serve a purpose by helping the team to better understand and empathize with the user. The persona sections we choose will directly shape the backlog items and design decisions for the product. So for this example, we're going to assume each section here is directly tied to backlog decisions, UX design, and marketing touchpoints. For this demo, I'm using fictional transcripts to simulate a data set. So you'll see on the screen here, this is otter.ai. And this is a transcription tool that I'm going to use, assuming that I've already had my research interviews. I have the recorded files that are uploaded to otter.ai, and these files will represent the actual interviews with the food ordering app users. And the transcripts that are going to be created from Otter will be used to upload to ChatGPT after I export them. So we're just going to go here, and with this one interview, I'm just calling test file. I'm going to export and click export. And then you can save it as whatever you would like, and we can drop it in there. Okay, so when I do that for every single interview I've created, I will have all my transcripts and a nice data set that I can then upload to ChatGPT. So we're going to kind of skip ahead here and assume that I did that for each one. If I go over to ChatGPT, and now I'm going to give ChatGPT the files that I created. Now, it's important to note here that you may have different data, right? If you actually, if you created, or if you went out and conducted research, you could have your transcripts, but you could also have raw research notes. You could have research reports, possibly some analytic data from an online application. You could have market research reports, all sorts of information that you could upload and include in your data set. If you don't have actual user research, you can create what's called assumptions-based personas, or sometimes called proto-personas. And Gen AI can really help immensely with either research-based or assumptions-based personas. Proto-personas, you might be wondering, why would in the world would I ever create an assumptions-based persona? But they are useful. If you don't have the time, money, resources to conduct research, what you can do is use the proto-persona as a way to get all of your assumptions out on the table. I'm sure everybody on the team has a different idea of who the user is, what they want, why they're using the product. So it's a way to capture all of that and get alignment on that. And then hopefully later, when there is time and resources, to actually validate those proto-personas with real research. But that's something you can do. If that is what you're going to do, create proto-personas, instead of uploading transcripts like this, what you would upload, since you don't have them, is any kind of document that actually captures what those assumptions are. It could be other kinds of research reports. Maybe you have customer service rep data. Perhaps there are surveys that have been done in the past, anything that documents stakeholder opinions, team assumptions, any quote unquote anecdotal evidence or market research or market generalizations you could include there. So to just make it clear, you use proto-personas when you have no data but need quick alignment. And you use personas or research-based personas when you have actual research to ground decisions. So since we have that, we are going to highlight them and we will add them. Actually, let me do it this way. We will add them to ChatGPT. Let me go over to our project here. Okay. All right, so they are going to be uploaded to ChatGPT. Now, I wanted to make a note here about data privacy and how important that is. Before you jump into using any Gen AI tool to start building anything, whether it's a persona, a journey map, or anything else, and you start uploading really important data to your company, you need to make sure you're aware of what your company protocol is when it comes to using AI tools. Because this data can be used to help train these models, some of them make this data public. So just be careful, know what the constraints are from your company, understand how the data is being used or not used by your Gen AI tool, and just make sure you're informed. So as I mentioned, we're using the fictional transcripts here. They've been added. And now we can move on to the next step. So for a persona prompt, we need to include specific information for it to be effective. We want to include what the product is, who uses it, why they're using it, the information that we want to include in the persona, which is what we defined in section 1 in our Miro board. And I'm going to show you an example prompt here that you could use here, plugging in your own data as needed. So we will plug this in and I will read it to you here. We're going to call this company Bites to Go for our food ordering app. We'll say Bites to Go is redesigning their food ordering app to better speak to their target audience. The app's primary audience are individuals between the ages of 18 and 45 who are tech savvy and prioritize convenience. The primary audience uses Bites to Go to order food and have it delivered quickly when they don't have time or the desire to cook a meal. You are a research assistant. Based on the attached interview scripts and notes, draft a data-informed persona for Chris, a busy professional who enjoys diverse cuisines. Include only these sections: values, motivations, affinities, goals, challenges, needs, demographics, behaviors, preferred touchpoints, online and offline. Use evidence from the transcripts. If you infer anything, mark it with assumption. Return in a tidy table. So it's really great that you can define all of this for your Gen AI tool in exactly the format that you want it to take. So as I mentioned, we're including only the sections that we defined in the previous step using the Miro board. And we made sure that it's going to return it in a specific way. So let's see what results we get from this. The reason why we're using this specific prompt is because this will help the Gen AI tool to write a persona that will be actionable, not one that's just narrative. So by specifically saying we want to include only these sections, these are the sections that we know matter most to our product team, the decisions that have to be made for our backlog. So let's look at the results that we got here from ChatGPT. It says, here's a tidy data-informed persona for Chris based on the interview transcripts you provided. I've cited evidence from the transcripts where available and marked assumptions clearly. So I like that it did put it in a table. It's nice here as I hover over, you can see that it's showing which file it pulled this data from, which is really nice. And you'll also probably see some assumptions here pulled out. Let's see if we can find one. Yeah, assumption here. So we've got some references here to some files, but it's making an assumption synthesized from busy young professionals like Sarah, Ashley, Marcus. And this one has no reference, and it's clearly marked an assumption. Now, I really love that it's doing this, and it would not do this unless I prompted it to do this. That's one thing that's really important to understand when using a Gen AI tool. The way it works, the way LLMs work, is that they're predictive, right? Now, it's always going to fill in the blank. If you do not give it instructions on what to do when it encounters a blank, it's just going to fill it in. But if you give it an out, if you say where there is no data and you're making stuff up, instead of making anything up, just mark it as an assumption or create it and flag it so I know that that is made up. And I found that you will sometimes encounter a hallucination even if you do this, but it's much more rare and usually easier to spot in some ways because it's harder for it to pull references that make sense and are credible. It's very important to know your data. You really have to understand the data and not just throw it over to AI hoping that it's going to spit out something that's 100% accurate all the time, because unfortunately that's just not how it works right now. It is going to make mistakes. We have to be the fail stop, right? We have to know our data well enough to say, oh, that's true and that's not true. So you might see here some of the data, maybe it seems a little thin to you, right? Like, let's read the behaviors. Orders delivery 3 to 5 times per week, often after long work days. Maybe that could be a little more rich here. The needs, accurate delivery time estimates and real-time updates, affordable, healthy options that are filling. I would like to know maybe a little bit more about that. Why is that important to that persona? So there may be some refinement here that we can do, maybe a narrative that ChatGPT can help us make to make this a little more rich. So this is definitely a good start, but I think there are some follow-up prompts and refinement that we can do to make it even better. So let's pull one out for example here. Let me copy and paste one over here. Now for this, we're going to say, use the following behavior prompts to rewrite the motivations and affinities section for this persona. Now, before I go forward, a behavior prompt, right, is simply, and for UX research, it really just means that you're asking a specific question, or you're painting a scenario, and you're usually presenting this to stakeholders or team members to help them describe what the behavior or the mindset of a hypothetical user would be when creating proto-personas. So for example here, motivations, incentives, and rewards. What types of incentives or rewards are most appealing to Chris, to this persona? How does your persona respond to different forms of motivation? If I were creating a proto persona and I had my team around and we're throwing out our assumptions, I would be asking these types of questions to try to get out of them, like, okay, who is this user? What, in your mind, what are the assumptions you have? For the affinities, for brand loyalty, what brands does your persona feel a strong affinity towards? Why? How do your persona's values and affinities influence their brand preferences? This gets a great way to get much more rich detail about the persona. Now, again, this data may or may not be there in the transcript. I'm really trying to see if ChatGPT can pull this out, if it exists. If it doesn't, I still want to know that it's an assumption. So we'll still make sure that assumptions are called out here. So you'll see it goes on to say, also, refine Chris's behaviors and needs sections using these behavior lenses: time constraints of a busy workday, willingness to try new cuisines versus sticking to favorites, importance of delivery speed and accuracy, preferred ways to interact with the app, rewrite with concise, actionable bullets, preserving evidence tags and assumption labels. So let's see what we get there. You can see it takes a little longer for it to get a little bit more detailed. So motivations respond strongly to financial incentives like discounts, promos, free delivery offers, and you can already see the roadmap building, right? Like what's going to help groom that backlog of this product. This is all great. So again, all juicy stuff that we can add to our persona to help us really narrow in on the product that we want to build. And what we can also do here to help those assumptions stand out a little bit more, a second follow-up prompt, which I like to include really for all of them. For this one, it says, to make it easier to distinguish verified versus inferred insights, color code this table so it's visually import ready for Miro, with assumption bullets in a different shade from evidence-backed ones. And you'll see that it's going to rewrite the table and use the different color codes here, green and blue, and the blue will stand for assumptions. So they really stand out a lot more. It looks like it's only making one assumption now. So that's nice, because then it's not like you have to read through everything to find the assumption, or do a control F to find the word assumption. And what I can do now is copy this over. So you can do that a number of different ways. You can export it into a PDF. You can ask ChatGPT to create a PDF file, a CSV file, whatever you want to import it into. You can copy and paste as well. If I copy and paste some of these over into our journey map, and that was needs. If I go down to needs here, I can paste those in there. And of course, I would make it so that it's going to fit in there nice and neat, and lower it. But you get the idea here of how that would get pasted in here. And the visual thing, that it's very nice to present a persona in a visual way. A lot of them can get really elaborate. People do all sorts of things where they like to, have them up on the office walls, or sometimes it can be put down in card form and they're always at the meeting table, and we can refer to the persona cards. People can get real creative with these. So I encourage you to do that as well and experiment with what works for your team. But I would typically pretty this up and put this in here and have it ready to go. Now, for this example, what I would do here is just Create a PDF version of this persona to download. An easier way to incorporate it into our data set to create a journey map. So I'll download this and then we'll have it to add into the next step. Agile discovery is about learning fast, spotting user needs, grouping signals, and framing them into clear hypotheses. What we've seen in this workflow is how AI can handle the heavy lifting of synthesis so teams can move from raw feedback to actionable backlog items with far less friction. So now that we've built and refined our persona, the next step is to map out the user's journey. A journey map is different from a persona. It helps us see the user's end-to-end experience, their goals or actions, frustrations, emotions, whatever we want at each stage of the journey. And this is going to give us a powerful way to spot gaps and opportunities that feed directly into backlog refinement and prioritization. So what I'm showing you here on the screen is my Miro board, and this is the template for a journey map. And this will be Chris's journey that he's going to be on for ordering food using this app. Again, I want to remind you that we have to do the heavy lifting here, not Gen AI, right? We have to define the structure of the journey map. And that means defining what the stages of that journey are. So if the journey is to order food, this journey stages could be awareness, consideration, sign up and onboarding, exploration, decision, transaction, fulfillment, and post-delivery. And let's just assume my team is most interested in understanding and learning what the jobs to be done are for each stage, the touch points, the actions they're taking, the frustrations they're going through, and their emotions and thoughts throughout the entire experience. This map is a great way to document all of that in one nice at-a-glance view. So we have Chris's experience during each stage. What we're going to do is use Gen AI to help us fill in these stages based on the data that we have. Since we used AI to help create our persona earlier, we can now add that to our data set. And since we've been using ChatGPT in the same chat window, it's already added, it's already in the persona or in the data set. So we can just continue on with adding our prompt for a journey map. Now, a journey map prompt is slightly different than a persona prompt. We have to include who is on the journey, that would be your persona, what journey they're on, the stages of the journey, and the information that we want to include during each stage. So that would be everything that we discussed in the previous section, looking at that Miro board. So again, the jobs to be done, the frustrations, all of that listed out. So you're going to see that in this example prompt here that we're going to use to build a journey map based on the data set. So let me add that and read it to you. So using the attached data set and Chris's persona, create a journey map for ordering dinner on a weeknight. The stages, awareness, consideration, all the ones we discussed. For each step, provide actions, thoughts, emotions, frustrations, jobs to be done, the whole thing that we mentioned. Cite specific transcript quotes for each bullet. If you must infer, mark with assumption. Return as a table for Miro. All right, so let's see the response that we get. All right, create a journey map for Chris, and you'll see it putting it in a table format, and you can see it's kind of looking like a real journey map in that structure, right? It has that same look and feel of having the stages across the top, the information we want to know in this column down the left here, and it's filling in the data in the middle. You can see it's referencing like before. Evidence-backed bullets are tagged with source citations, and inferred insights are labeled assumptions. We can ask it once again to do that color coding. And we can also ask it once again to refine this further. So if we're reading through and we see some things that don't seem to make sense or seem a little thin, let's look through here. I'm curious if it could tell me why it assumed what it did. So let's do this. Let's do this follow-up prompt. It says, update the journey map by keeping only evidence-backed bullets, include inline quote refs. For each assumption, add a short rationale to make it easier, again, to distinguish between verified and inferred, color code it. And add a final row, known gaps to research next, grouped by stage. This is a really great way to know what we need to continue to research. So if your researchers need to know where to fill in the gaps, you can just highlight it really quickly here. And you can really keep refining until it's really where you want it, or asking questions of it. I think that this step with refinement really helps surface what we know, what we've guessed, and what to research next. So again, just like anything else, we can copy and paste this into our Miro board. Let's just take this one. Let's say awareness, and that was an action. Again, we can shorten it up and make sure it fits in there, and then just kind of fill it out as we go. And again, a visual map is really helpful for stakeholders. They respond much better to visualizations than just sending them a bulleted list or a table that's just black and white. It helps them to just see it better. And I think a picture is definitely worth 1,000 words in this way, because you're really giving them a lot of information at a glance in one view. So you want to make it as easy to digest as possible. And these visual journey maps make that easy to do. So it's important to note that these personas and journey maps are just drafts. They need to be reviewed by the team and socialized just to check for accuracy and remove any weak assumptions or hallucinations before finalizing. Before we wrap up, I want to share a few important cautions about using AI responsibly in this process. AI accelerates these first drafts, but it does not replace research or team buy-in. As I mentioned before, hallucinations from AI can and does happen. We can reduce this by creating just comprehensive data sets, requiring AI models to reference direct quotes and label assumptions. It's also important for me to mention, as a researcher, that it's never a good idea to skip conducting actual user research with real end users. They lack real insight. They cannot replace real human data. They're only as good as the assumptions used to create them. And assumptions are typically full of bias, right? You have to think of it as a placeholder and not a replacement, so that eventually you're going to validate it against real user research. The role of discovery in Agile is to make sure our backlogs reflect real customer needs. By using AI to draft personas and journey maps early, we give teams a way to ground roadmaps in evidence while still iterating and refining together. It's a faster, more collaborative path to a truly customer-centric backlog. Thank you so much for watching this workflow. I encourage you all to keep experimenting using AI to make discovery more efficient while also preserving human insight to ground deliverables in authentic user needs. I hope you've enjoyed walking through this tutorial with me. Feel free to make this workflow your own and just have fun with it.